This video can be about anything. But the question is, can someone share the spirit even if they smoked marijuana? The spirit is everywhere, and yet, is it a spirit that's trying to divide? A spirit that's trying to stop other people from uniting within themselves and be encouraged to externalize that? Because sometimes there is a teaching that if we've internalized it, we don't have to talk to anyone about it. And that's true. No one is forcing us, because in the end it is us that actually determines everything that we experience. But we can't control certain external factors. And the external factors often might seem, I am not capable of sharing my spirit. And I know I did not have to share that I smoked marijuana, which I do think can delay and minimize processing speed, processing capacity. But what determines a message is the spirit of what we can practically and idealistically do. And right now the conversation is about, well, let's dive into another version of the spirit. There was a blip right after I said that. Do you want to close your eyes? Do you want to have your eyes open? There are usually different scenarios that can happen when you close your eyes. You tune in more into the subtle realm, which doesn't necessarily mean you're tuning into the universal principle that calls for an extension of action to stand for what is in here, in equal proportion for experiencing what is in here. For if we run away from what comes through, we will increase the magnitude of impression that experience has on us in a way that we often feel contraction, that everything is closing in on us. The stars, the atoms, the people, the infrastructure, the systems, the leaders, or so-called leaders, the self-centered, elite-centered culture. But it's not completely. And there's nothing wrong with an elite if they do not see other people as equally an elite that has the ability to rise within our consciousness, that raises the practical necessities that everyone needs for life. And it's often not looked that way, at least in many ways. Now, should I go into specifics? Am I hesitating? Well, maybe it's some form of a hesitation, but I also see there was okay. There are different scenarios that can happen. And sometimes it's okay to take a little bit of time to decide which topic you want to take. And the simple essence of this message is, can we see a bigger perspective right here, right now? Even if you may have fallen for external mind-altering substances which delay some form of processing and understanding the wisdom for the blessing of every action that happens in life, while still standing against those forces that are trying to stop other people from making choices. And that's, so you're trying to, there's always a counter argument. So in some way you're still wanting to control the narrative by standing up for something. But in this world, we do have to stand for something, even if you're sitting. And no matter who is listening around us, we may not be outwardly recording ourselves, but at the same time, we are building ourselves, which isn't just ourself, but it's every self, into a united self, while experiencing a diverse self of many beings. Mathematically, that statement may not have made sense. Behind every letter is a certain number, and combinations of sets of numbers that translate into letters, and they create geometrical lines, directions, shapes, angles, colors, and we call that real life, the real world. And sometimes we orient that to time and space, that at a particular time it's better to use a particular space for doing something, because of motorcycles, perhaps my inability to share information that you don't find valuable. And we're all probably going to have some disagreements because we're all so unique, and there's so much projection at a certain level of consciousness that suggests we are not capable of breaking through of any level of consciousness and experiencing the golden age. Why is it golden? Because in gold there is a regal collection of experiences that are looked at not through random events, but through directly determined conscious decisions that knew it had a variety of choices. But maybe sometimes it only saw between one or two choices. But the question of the day is, can we see the multiple choices while still acknowledging there is a strong dividing line, and speaking out about what raises the whole or what divides the whole. And right now I just had an intuition that there's a part of us that does not want to be shared with other people. I see it as a very thick level of consciousness. And even if we're wrong, or we don't see the complete picture, I still feel there is a greater synthesis of order, harmony, rhythm, and melody that can be produced through communicating with those of us who are in reach. And how do we do that? Well, for some we cannot reach. But sometimes we won't know we can't reach them unless we try reaching them. And that is the great adventure, if it even has a word. How do we raise the whole versus put down the whole? What is the whole? It is the ring that comes full circle, but it's also a world where there can be subtle traps. And one of the biggest subtle traps that prevents us from communicating on a conscious level might be the will to come together with no expectation. But what if it's like a murderer that might kill us? And even then, if we know that we cannot control anything, we might be able to rise to the point where we are aware of everything in the sphere of our current level of consciousness, that then we'll have an opportunity to go to another level. And what distinguishes the levels from each other is what only we as individuals can determine for ourselves. But the individual is never separated from the collective. So it's like we are an organism with many other organisms. How do I make this an analogy? The world is like each person are paradigms of organisms building or destructing. And so a lot of people ask, if it doesn't pay, then it's probably not the most positive thing to do full time, or to do how shall we say, to make do. But the world would want this message for me to speak fast, but even beyond that level, regardless of the world and what the world does, I know I have the free will right to share my consciousness at any given time, even if that means death of the self. That is only a level of it's only a collection of perceptions from the levels, the experiences we've had. And so we've had many experiences, but I'm going to dial down now. You're a great person. But what makes a person great is their ability to see that we can stand against certain states of consciousness that suggests what? Income inequality does not have to exist. The world says, how do you regulate it? I mean, that's the answer. But what does regulation look like? To me, it looks like people speaking out about a way that serves everyone more. How do you do that? We have to share ideas from another level of absolutism, but that still create chords in a certain pattern that produce an awe-inspiring effect, but not shock and awe. Although it might shock some people, when people turn to the light, there will be those who have faced the darkness for a while. How long is a while? I cannot completely answer that question, but it's okay. 17 minutes and 15 seconds. What caused me to say 17 minutes and 16 seconds? This need to suggest reality is at a particular time. Well, the now is the only real time. But what do we do and not do in that moment? I'm going to dial down. Why did I just say I'm going to dial down? Fear. And where does that fear come from? The sense that I'm not acceptable right now, because I'm not talking on a line that ignites this enthusiastic, inspirational purpose. Which I do believe is here at every moment, but children. Really, children? Yes, as we are children. But children also contains within itself the adult, the blueprint. Even though for some people we may say they have not been able to achieve adulthood despite them being at an older age. Because we can share our definitions of what adulthood means, but are we trying to assist the children and the adults in equal proportion? And a lot of children and a lot of adults may not be able to be reached in an easier way. Children have more openness, but the adults will not be able to make certain shifts until there is a certain critical mass of expression of our voices, which can be online or on land. They're of equal value, because you can't have online without having on land. And you can't really have a strong on land without having some online connection to that which allows all of us to exist. Which is what I cannot name, because it does not have a name. So, is this video acceptable or not acceptable? Does not have to be determined by an external force. Why do I say that? Well, oftentimes we act based off of the collective, and it's a strong collective, but it's not just strong. There's beautiful parts. There's also parts that are hard to fathom because we're all family. We're all in this together, even though there are some parts of us that seem to say no. What we believe and where we come from makes us different. And there's obviously truth, right? But we're all family. And there are those of us who will die experiencing that consciousness, while there are those who may try to stop those people from reaching that consciousness. But what prevails in the end is what prevailed in the beginning, which was the desired experience to stand for those things. What are those things? Those principles. What are those principles? Those sensations that we've received through interacting with people that helped us carve out our forever unique outlook of society. And for a lot of us, we have not come to that adulthood where there are some of us in society that are really beginning in numbers to experience that adulthood that sees the child not only as of equal importance, but as within the adult forever. And that is a statement that I'm not going to elaborate on. But you with the purple shirt on your phone, you're a great person. You're a great person. Thank you for shining as bright as the sun. I know it may not seem like we could shine so bright, but I reason to think that we are a mirror of the sun. And that's like, okay, that's too grand of a statement. You need to have some sort of foundation. But the foundation is something that acknowledges what's inside of an atom, or it's inside of a human person. There is something very difficult to communicate, at least at my level of understanding. And I think there's a will to go beyond understanding into an experience that doesn't necessarily require on specific words and sounds, But anyways, though I'm like recording myself, I still feel the people who this will reach is another part of myself that if I ignore might affect my ability to see that other people are a part of me. And that, I think we all can get caught in that way of experiencing life, because, well, there can be a list of things we would rather not want to happen, but everything might lead us back to that principle, which I was saying, oh, what's a principle? I think it's some will, some drive to go beyond our own experience into the experience of the whole, of the collective, of all the cultures, of all the religions, of all the different scientific theories, and really make some observation that though one side might look very dark and the other side might look very light, there still might be a collective evolution to a higher level than where we're at now that favors everyone, based on our ability to see that we can be that change we wish to see in the world. And it doesn't seem very profitable to really try to share something that allows us to have our needs taken care of while addressing the root cause of those basic needs. What did I just say? The root cause of those basic needs? Yes. Well, evolution, or some say God, but whatever people call it, I think the biggest question is, do we see that we cannot have a small group of people making all the decisions for us? Not all the decisions, but critical decisions that have in turn repeated what our observation of history is. So I know I'm like projecting a lot. I'm going to take a step back, because sometimes we forget that the other person's experience matters just as much. And so we don't always have to we don't always have to give a set time for another person to share their thoughts. But on some level, throughout our experience of the heart, we will have to give the other person an equal value of time and space to go deeper into how it truly affects us. It's like, that's a whole other discourse. But within time and space, there might be something more to our beating heart. "29 minutes and 55 seconds. Why did I just say 29 minutes and 55 seconds? Because there's this sense I have to acknowledge a specific time in reality. What is reality? It is our perception of time and space. How can you say that with such certitude? I don't have any consideration for having to share something with certitude or with some hesitation. But we would all like to be confident that what we are experiencing right now is relatively the same thing that allows us to see everyone as united while still acknowledging certain divisions. Divisions that we can make a list for. A lot of us would probably agree what those divisions are. But is there another question that comes after? Well, you can always make more questions. Why are you trying to make questions? Are you trying to make money? There's nothing wrong with making money off of formulating questions and then answers. But what is money? Money is part of the earth element, part of the vegetable kingdom, which has a certain... Well, we can always compartmentalize. Earth cannot be created without fire. Some people will say, well, without always feeling the need to have to address what other people say. Molten lava has shaped the earth, but what gave rise to the elements in the lava? Well, that came from Earth's magnetic core that has a certain radiation. I can't talk into specifics, but perhaps at the same time I can, because those specifics are connected to another molten core. And what evidence would I have to say, well, the Earth could not exist without the molten core of the sun. How do you know the sun has a molten core? Well, I think the world might say you can't, because we don't have, or maybe we do have the astronomical knowledge that the core is made up of gas. Pardon me, ma'am, do you know if the core of planets is made out of gas or liquid? It's okay. Case in point, will money be seen as something that comes from a source that might be on a chain? What is that chain? A series of different levels. And I think we can all recognize that without the sun on the chain, we would not be able to shine our own sun. What is that sun? But the molten core, which people would say your heart is not molten, but for those who really love people to their core, they will see that there is a fiery essence that produces the electromagnetic pulse that allows for the reconstruction of all our cells, to allow our neurons, but even greater than that, something to allow us to experience the new economy, the new political system, the new educational system, the new health and medical system. There are many different systems, but the educational system is truly what will reinforce the system of education that we have inside of us, that draws us to stand for that molten core. That often requires a certain amount of temperature to radiate certain material that then creates our reality as we know it. But the question is, will that lava, that fire, will it create more unity, or will it create more division? What is unity and division? Well, we were talking about money, and money is one of the things that people need to survive. But there's something that allows money to be used as something that allows us to thrive, not as an individual, but also as a whole. What is a whole? It is what you will have to find out for yourself, as I will have to find out for myself, no matter what amount of money comes our way. But people often recognize that money is something that we often struggle with because it's tied to our jobs, it's tied to certain people who may have very, very unbalanced psychological characteristics. And at times it can feel like it turns us into them the more we are aware of it and are experiencing it. But at a certain level, I think we could acknowledge that what truly gets us to a point where we can receive what is it that gives us life. It's not just the water in this picture. It's not just the sun in this picture. It's not just the symbol of the bear in this picture. But it's also a symbol of the red geometric lines that are in between our worldview of the molten core within each atom. And each spirit. Is there a difference between each atom and each spirit? And the answer, I would say, there is no difference.